Okay. In the beginning of 1917, Shirari Ji sold his tea shop, borrowed money, and obtained a license to open a toddy shop on Sachapir Street. Mirwan started working in this new toddy shop 2 hours a day. He did all sorts of chores to help his father, washing and filling bottles, sweeping the floor, selling drinks. At times, when a customer became intoxicated from too much to drink, Mehran would sit with him and sing Tukaram's abhangs, devotional songs. The drunkard would merrily join in, clapping his hands and singing along. In this manner, the toddy shop truly became a tavern of song with Merwan as its keeper, distributing the wine of love to all who came there. At other times, Merwan would advise certain clientele to drink moderately or abstain from liquor altogether. Some of these men he would not serve. When Memo heard about this, she rebuked her son. Just a moment. She rebuked her son casuistically. Merog, are you trying to share in your father's business or trying to ruin it? What is wrong with you? If people stop drinking toddy, how will the business survive? Bobo, appreciating Merwan's nature, paid little heed to Memo's remarks, and customers too began addressing him respectfully as Merwan Ji. Although Merwan Ji was working hard each day in the toddy shop, actually, he was still not completely gross consciousness. I think it should be still not completely in gross consciousness. His actions were governed solely by the impulses of the divine will manifesting through him. For example, when, for example, one morning when Medvanji was riding his bicycle to the toddy shop, he sped past the shop, cycling as far away as Mahabaleshwar, rode 8 miles outside Pune. Only when he had ridden halfway up to Katraj Ghat Hill Road did he seemingly realize he was going in the wrong direction. As he was ascending the steep road, pedaling became difficult. Only then did it dawn on him that he was in a hilly regions of Mahabaleshwar, headed towards Mahabaleshwar. He then rode back to Pune, arriving late at the toddy shop. On Friday, 16th February 1917, Merwanji composed an exceptionally beautiful ghazal. How wonderful is the murderous mercy of God! His mercy has adorned the rose with thorns. What justice exists in the glory of God? There is cruelty in his kindness. It matters not whether wine is accepted by any religion. I long for the intoxication of love. O God, what bliss lies in love's intoxication! The wine of man can never bestow it. One cannot experience love by reading books. Love can never be described in words. I have never read about real love, for it cannot be written. Portray love with the blood of your heart, and it will be yours. O God, grant me the gift of your union. I have died in your separation. But in your ledger, you need not count the torments I'm feeling away from you. Blood is spilling from my heart, which has become like minced meat. But missing is that salt which you sprinkle in the wounds of the heart. Why should one question the lovers of God about him? one should long to ask God directly, "Oh God, you are found in the question as well as in the answer. I have seen the same God everywhere. His abode is every heart. God is the wine cellar in the house, rich in purity, and he is ever present in the house of ruination." Why should one feel restless, experiencing misery, cruelty, and the difficulties of the world? Oh, Yuma, if God showers his mercy upon you, then pleasure is felt in pain. Mehranji considered this ghazal to be special, and after composing it, he mailed it to the well-known Gujarati author Soma Sorabji Desai of Navsari. Mehranji enclosed his note: "Soma, I'm sending you my humble ghazal, which I composed yesterday. Please accept it. A lover of God, Huma." The ghazal was to have a profound effect on Soma Desai as well, as will be seen later on. During 1917, Mehranji suggested to Behramji that they become partners, and another toddy shop in some village where, besides doing business, they could do public and social service and also meditate in solitude. Yeah.
Footnote says, at no time was it necessary for Merwan to meditate in solitude because he had experience of the supreme reality, but for the sake of creation, and especially for seekers after truth and those connected with him, he had to do it. Go ahead.
Bhairamji would usually act in respectful accordance with Mehranji's dictates and guidance in everything he did. And in this way, he can be considered as the first of Mehranji's close disciples of Mandali. Mehranji's proposal appealed to Bhairamji, who applied for a liquor license soon after. However, when it was granted, Mehranji refused to go through with the business arrangement since the liquor license was not in Behramji's name as he had instructed, but was in Behramji's brother's name. This was a hard lesson for Behramji, and he remembered to always follow Mehranji's words literally from then on. In April 1917, an ardent devotee of Upasani Maharaj invited the master to attend the foundation laying ceremony for a medical dispensary he was opening for the poor in the Sion area of Bombay.
All right. Thank you, Mona.
Thank
I'll take over here. Upasni, with many of his followers, graced the occasion and sent word for Marwanji to meet him there. It was during this occasion that Marwanji first met a 27-year-old disciple of Upasni's named Gustad Nusserwanji Hansotia. During their conversation, Marwanji's remarkable insights made a deep impression upon Gustaji, and he wanted to know more of what Marwanji had to say about spiritual matters. However, Marwanji left Bombay that same day, much to Gustaji's disappointment. After the partnership with Baramji was cancelled, Marwanji again focused his energy on his father's toddy shop, working regularly for 2 hours each day. As usual, he continued visiting Babajan every evening. During the day, he would find a secluded place to continue his grim practice of pounding his forehead for hours at a time on a stone. He continued to conceal the resulting wound with a large kerchief or hand towel.
you.
One day in the toddy shop, Marwanji composed the following ghazal dedicated to Babajan, to whom it was also read. It was written using both Hindi and Urdu and later translated. O beloved master, I am eternally grateful to you. If I had 100,000 lives, I would sacrifice every one of them at your feet. You drowned me in the eternal ocean of oneness and transformed me into an ocean like yourself. In the twinkling of an eye, you made a lover into God, and God I have become. O Emperor of Masters, O Ocean of Mercy, O Perfection personified Sadguru, if your merciful glance falls on anyone, a beggar turns into a king. Gods, goddesses, angels, celestial beings, and men are all awed by the brilliance of your divinity. O enlightened master of the three worlds, even if I were to transform my body into the sandals of your feet, it would be nothing in comparison with what you have done for Merwan.
There's a beautiful, very, very, very beautiful and heart soulful song that melody that Misha, what his name from the Sufis?
Rutenberg.
Well, huh?
Ruten- the
Yeah,
Sufi Rutenberg.
Yeah.
yeah, he put it to music and it's so beautiful. I advise to listen. It's so beautiful.
Okay. After the onset of the First World War, Bailey, who was then living in Bombay, working in an Irani restaurant, had enlisted in the British Indian Navy. His duties as a storekeeper took him to England, France, Greece, Egypt, and Arabia. While he was out of the country, Bailey maintained his friendship with Merwan through correspondence. Bailey would read Merwanji's letters not once, but many times. Poems from Merwan were often included. Often, when Bailey's ship docked in Bombay, Merwan was waiting to meet him. Bailey related, during my total field service of 3 years, 1.5 years of sailing on the sea, and another on land duty at Aden, I maintained my correspondence with Merwan through letters. And the moment my steamer would anchor at Bombay port, Merwan would especially come and visit me on the steamer. Merwan would keep tabs from the daily newspapers about the arrival and departure of steamers, and as soon as the announcement of the arrival of my ship, Syria, would appear, he would come and wait at the docks beforehand. At times he would come in the company of Jamshed, but mostly he would come alone. He would have tea, breakfast, and lunch with me on the steamer. In the evening, after obtaining leave for a few hours from my superiors, we both would go and fetch Jamshed from his small room at Baikula, and after spending some time together, we would depart to our respective destinations. Once it so happened that for some reason, either there was a delay on my part in replying to Merwan's letter, or maybe I received his letter late. I cannot say for sure. But because of this delay, Merwan became anxious, sent me a simple postcard, and when that postcard was received by me, I saw only a rhyme consisting of these two lines. While waiting, my heart is becoming a kebab. Dear Bailey, quickly send a reply. In two lines, Merwan encapsulated all his feelings, his sense of humor, his love, his longing to hear from me, together with his request to send a reply soon. I must have read these lines hundreds of times over the years.
Marvin, I'll just read those two lines.
Go ahead.
इंतजारी से दिल होता है कबाब. इंतजारी से दिल होता है kebab. That means, yeah, exactly. While I'm waiting and waiting, my heart is becoming like a kebab. भेज प्यारे बेली जल्दी कुछ जवाब. So yeah, my dearest beloved Bailey, quickly send me a.
Thank you. After several years, Bailey became tired of his life at sea and applied for a land position. His application was accepted and he obtained leave for 1 month to come to Pune. Bailey promptly went in search of Merwan and found his friend helping his father in the toddy shop on Sachapur Street. It was a happy reunion. Hoping to induce Merwan to join the military, Bailey narrated his experiences in the foreign lands. Bailey had sorely missed Merwan's companionship and wished to regain his intimate friendship, but Merwan refused to enlist. Bailey described the toddy shop. After retiring from the hotel tea shop business, Shariarji entered excise business, that is, liquor, toddy, opium, ganja, and such other narcotics legal at the time, including the sale of a piyush drink. Let's see what that is. Piyush is a Sanskrit word meaning the food of the gods, ambrosia or nectar. The drinks were popular among Iranis and prepared with sweetened buttermilk, ground almonds, nutmeg, cardamom, and other nuts and spices, and in this case, some intoxicants probably. He got good clientele and made good money. Merwan also started helping him in this business, but on a limited scale. Merwan did not take any interest in the opium, ganja, or liquor shops. He only took some interest in being a cashier at the toddy shop and took pleasure in filling up quickly the empty toddy bottles. He knew that the toddy was not totally pure. It was necessary to add intoxicants to give it an added kick. Whenever any customer would ask for high quality toddy, Merwan would unhesitatingly say, "If you want pure toddy, go have it while it is being removed from the tree. We do not have pure stuff here." Further, he might add, "As it is yesterday's stale stuff. Not only that, it is mixed with masala. It would be better if you did not drink it. What is the point in wasting your money as well as spoiling your health?" Those aware of Merwan's light-hearted and cheerful nature would take all this as a joke and would not take this advice seriously. Not only that, but they would be tempted to enter the shop only if they saw Merwan at the cashier's desk or busy filling the bottles. Otherwise, they would stay away from the shop. Merwan would leave the shop when his father arrived in the evening, and thus, because of Merwan's presence, the shop would be crowded and a cheerful atmosphere would prevail. But when Shariarji was sitting in the shop, there would be less crowd and less jubilation, as most of them, out of respect for him, would make less noise. One would not charge any money to a poor person who had a small quantity of the drink. They would get their drink free of charge. One amongst them was a middle-aged Harijan who would sit outside the shop on the road and take full advantage morning and evening of Merwan's generosity. Rosalie, you want to go on, take over?
Yes, yeah. He would compose and sing songs, not only in praise of other saints, but also on Merwan. This was liked by all, and Merwan too encouraged him. He used to take financial help from Merwan, and his association with Merwan lasted for a long time. Bailey had been largely unaware of Merwan's contact with Babajan and Upasni Maharaj, but during the month of his leave, he noticed a change in his friend. I felt a transformation in Merwan's attitude. The old Merwan was no more, and I was in the company of a new Merwan. That is what I felt in my heart all the time. As days went by, I became more and more aware of Merwan's detachment and aloofness. Bailey sought out Merwan's company every chance he could, continuously trying to persuade him to join the military. Finally, Merwan gave in. "I will join the Navy with you," he said. "I will agree on the condition that I be stationed wherever you are." Bailey confidently promised to arrange it. Since it was wartime and the military needed all the recruits it could muster, early the next morning, Bailey contacted his superior, who also happened to be in Pune, and then took Merwan to the Navy recruitment office and had him enlisted. Merwan signed the necessary induction papers and was instructed to wait for the orders to report for duty. Bailey was delighted. Thus, Merwan joined the Navy and offered himself in the service of the British Empire and his country. Of course, Merwan had not spoken about his decision with his parents, and no one except Bailey knew what he had done. A few days passed while Merwanji continued his daily duties at his father's toddy shop. Then one evening, a Maratha clerk working at the recruitment office mentioned to his father about Merwan's enlistment. The father was a regular customer at Bobo's shop and went for a drink as usual. Merwanji knew him also, but he rarely worked in the toddy shop in the evening. The man started talking to Bobo. "Your son should be complimented," he said. "You must be very proud of him. It's a big sacrifice on his part to volunteer and serve his country in this bloody war." Bobo at first could not follow what the man was talking about and thought he was under the influence of the toddy. He started making light of it, teasing the man. "My friend, you have drunk too many tonight. You don't know what you were saying. My Merag, a recruit? Nonsense. Merag is not the military sort." The man was surprised by Bobo's remarks and disclosed the facts of the matter. "I am telling you, Shariar, it is true. My son told me that Merwanji signed the papers." Only then did Bobo believe him, and he became anxious. When Merwanji returned home from his nightly visit with Babajan, Bobo confronted him immediately. "Son, I have heard some shocking news. Have you enlisted in the Navy?" Merwanji replied, "Yes, father, that is a fact. I am joining to be near Bailey, and we're going to travel all over the world together." "Listen to me, son," Bobo said. "You must stay away from such things. Have your name withdrawn tomorrow." Merwanji refused, pointing out, "Once my name has been registered, it cannot be stricken. I want to join." Merwanji further pleaded, "Bobo, give me your permission. Give me your willing permission to join the Navy." Bobo was obstinate and refused to hear another word. "Nonsense, you are not meant for such things, Merag. I do not want you to go away. It is difficult for me to let you out of my sight for even a few days, much less than months or years at a time. Merag, you are not meant for such a life. I am going to that Navy office tomorrow myself and make certain that your name is erased from the enlistment list." Bobo's remarks did not affect Merwanji, and he disregarded his father's threat. But the very next morning, Bobo did go to the head recruiting officer and, using his influence and a thick packet of currency notes, had his son's name removed. Merwanji appeared disappointed, and moreover, so was Bailey. Bobo made Bailey promise not to talk to Merwan about such things, or he would forbid him to visit. Bailey promised and continued to meet Merwanji at the toddy shop every day during the remainder of his leave. The two friends reminisced about their childhood days and mutual friends, discussed poetry, and talked about Bailey's future. Bailey continued to be deeply impressed by Merwan's poetic gift. In Bailey's account, he recorded this incident from that time. For Merwan, it was simply child's play to rhyme or compose verses. He did it with seemingly effortless ease. He had a great facility. No sooner he took a pen in hand, it would start writing on the paper. Moreover, at times, on the spur of the moment, he would speak in verses. One time I challenged his ability and asked him to write a congratulatory poem on the occasion of the wedding of a mutual friend named Minu. Though Merwan had no interest in such themes, just to please Minu, who was also present, he wrote a splendid song which he himself sang. The song was so beautiful that I was taken aback at his natural gift, and all my doubts vanished.
Okay, thank you, Rosalie. Michal, would you like to go on?
Yeah, it's okay. When Bailey's, how lucky we are that he didn't go to the army. When Bailey's leave ended, he received new orders to be ready to proceed to Egypt aboard a hospital ship. Since his application for transfer to land duty had been approved, this new development shocked him, and he immediately went to the officer in charge to check the records. The officer canceled his appointment to Egypt. He then ordered Bailey to leave on the next ship for Zanzibar within 24 hours. This time, Bailey did not try to have the order changed. Later, Bailey wrote about his encounter. I took Babajan to be nothing short of a sorceress. I did not believe in her in the least and bore contempt for her. She looked like a mad beggar. I disliked it that Merwan was calling himself her disciple. When Merwan used to visit Babajan, I used to tease and make fun of him. And here he was advising me to have Babajan's darshan. I did not like the idea of seeing her, and I was irritated by Merwan's assistant. In spite of that, I could not displease him, so I consented and had to approach the ancient woman. My only request was that I would not like to meet her in broad daylight, but in evening after sunset. In those days, Babajan had nowhere to stay except underneath a large old neem tree near Char Wadi. She was seated, leaning against the trunk in a manner as if she were eagerly awaiting my arrival. Only two other persons were standing nearby, praying with folded hands. Merwan had told me to first put my head on her feet, but I refused, proudly saying, I will not bow down. I will bow only to him, God, wherever he may be. Except for him, neither my body nor my mind will I lower to anyone else. I sensed that Merwan was grieved by an expression of arrogance, but showed no reaction and gave me permission to act as I liked before her. I went to Babajan alone. The instant Babajan saw me, I raised my right hand in salutation to her, saying, Salam, Babajan. Welcome, my son, welcome, she mumbled in an almost inaudible, sweet and humble voice. Come and sit near me. Who are you? From where do you come? Merwan had anticipated such a question and told me to tell her, I am your Kasal Khadim, humble servant, and your son has sent me. To this she replied, except God. Who else is my son? Well, if you have come from God himself, I will inform him that my son has met me. Anything else? Without understanding what she meant, except her last words, I explained that I was in the Navy and was about to proceed to Aden, and would she permit me to do so and give me her blessings? The moment she heard the word Aden, she was startled, as if from sleep, and straightened her back from her drooping posture. Lifting her left fist, she lightly tapped her chest twice, closed her eyes, and repeated softly, Aden, Aden. Then, in a loud voice, quite different from her previous sweet one, she spoke with a hoarse whisper, as if moved by some sorrow. Aden is my land. It has come out of me. I created it. But today it wants to mock me. She stopped then, stared intently at my face for 1 or 2 seconds, heaved a sigh, and the sweet voice returned. Well, son, you may go, she said very softly. Khuda Hafiz, may God protect you. Then she asked, when will we meet again? When you wish, Babajan. When it pleases you, I said. My reply sent her deep in thought. Then she rumbled the words, you will have to wait for 5 years. He tells me 2 years. No, no, I won't allow 2 years. So come exactly after a year and a half. She continued, but I could not follow the meaning of her words. I have come here after staying there 7 years. Many used to stay with me, and I will be with you. Also, I will keep my child with me. I am with the world, and God is with me. Saying this, she extended her left hand to me, which in veneration I held, and submitting to some secret feeling, I kissed. I heaved a sigh of relief that the meeting had come to an end, and quickly joined both hands, bowed to her, and returned. Meron was waiting for me in a nearby cafe. I informed him everything in detail about my first ever meeting with Babajan. He heard me out without interruption. Then Meron remarked, it is better that we don't understand the rigmarole of all these great saints. Whatever she has signified about you, I believe refers to some coming calamity. With regret, Meron continued, and from what I think of it, I can say that the future does not hold well for you, Bailey. You will have to face terrible difficulties, and you will have to suffer much. May God protect you. What can be done, Bailey? Whatever is written in your fate, you have to go through. But one thing you did well. You took my advice and met Babajan. Because of her blessings, you will return safely. I asked Merwan the implication of Babajan's instructions to come after 1.5 years. Merwan did not respond and ended the conversation. Still, I did not give much credence to either Babajan or to Merwan's warning. Consequently, I did not pay much attention to what they said. I left the same night for Bombay, where I had to wait a full month to catch a ship, not knowing what lay in store for me. Have to
Okay.
change the page.
All right. Time to change reader. Marion, would you like to read?
Marian, are you there?
Yes, I am here, but I'm having a little nasal drip. So I would prefer to listen today rather than read.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm grateful you're there. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're going to go back to Mona now. I don't think there's anybody else on right now.
No, there's no one.
Angela's phone's on, but I don't know if she's there. Angela, are you there?
No.
No,
She's
no,
not.
she's not with us.
Okay, great. So during this period, Merwan told Bailey about Upasni Maharaj also, and of how great a master he was. During a conversation about Maharaj, Merwan became inspired and composed the following Aarti, song of worship in Hindi and Urdu to Upasni Maharaj. O Master Upasni Maharaj, the emperor of sadhus and saints, justice, equity, and staunch love made you the king. Let us always meditate on you and respect your name. O Master, you are formless, attributeless, the priest of all. By annihilating your ego, you become God Himself. Liberate us from the clutches of Maya and bestow on us the name of God. Free us from this worldly bondage and hand us the cup of divine wine to drink. O Master, you are formless, attributeless, the purest of all. Keep us away from the senses of snares of lust, greed, and anger. Bestow on us divine light by annihilating our ego. Help us to cross the sea of illusion. O Master, you are formless, attributeless, the purest of all. We, your servants, give up all religious ceremonies and rituals for your sake. So liberate us from these and let us always be near your feet. We decide to dedicate to you our body, mind, and soul, come what may. Make us sink or swim. O Master, you're formless, attributeless, the purest of all. Turn sinners into saints by making us virtuous. In your mercy, make your our soul one with God. You are all powerful, all merciful, all gracious, the very essence of freedom. O Master, you're formless, attributeless, the purest of all. You reside in all, the rich and the poor, the good and the evil. You see only God in everything and everyone. You are always the same. You have no religion or caste. O Master, you are the formless, attributeless, purest of all. You are the embodiment of truth, all knowledge, power, and bliss, the Master. Together we offer you a heartfelt prayers and worship, O Yogi Raj, King of Yogis. Your devotees salute and bow down to you again and again, O Master, your formless, attributeless, the purest of all. The marvelous thing was that not only did Meherwanji write this ghazal in a matter of minutes, but also at the same time he was attending to the toddy shop customers. After some time, the Aarti was published in the Gujarati weekly newspaper, Kaiser-e-Hind, which had also published Meherwanji's ghazal dedicated to Babajan. On different occasions during 1917, Babajan urged Meherwanji, "My son, go now get your share from a Hindu." Meanwhile, in July 1917, Upasni Maharaj moved from the Khandoba temple in Shirdi to the crematory grounds in the village of Sakori. Meherwanji became a regular visitor to Upasni's new abode, traveling to Sakori by train, sometimes with a companion and sometimes alone. In the train, Meherwanji often chose to sit at the floor near the door of the toilet in the dirty third class compartment. He would get off the train at Chitali station and walk 9 miles to Sakori. To strangers, Meherwanji appeared as a person suffering the effects of too much alcohol. At times, he would stagger like a drunken man because, despite his activities in his father's toddy shop, Meherwanji was still not completely gross consciousness. He was only slightly aware of the world around him and did not feel his physical body as an ordinary man does. Meherwanji was embodying the consciousness of God, and he was able to function in the world only because of the stirring of the song within him. He was, so to speak, operating on automatic pilot, moved by impulses, guided by the divine will. Once, while going to Sakori alone, he had The impulse to get off the train at Kopargaon, a railway station, instead of Chitali, which comes first. It was 10 o'clock at night, bitter cold, but Meranji, wearing only a light cotton coat and pants, started walking on the road. The night was black, and though the town was only 2 miles from the train station, it took him more than 2 hours to reach it. Coincidentally, Sadguru Narayan Maharaj happened to be visiting devotees in Kupargaon. But Meherwanji did not stop to see him. He passed through the city and headed straight to Sakori, about 10 miles away. At one juncture on the road, a policeman stopped Meherwanji and warned him not to wander on the dark road, for the area ahead abounded with thieves. The policeman was holding Meherwanji's coat sleeve, trying to persuade him to stay the night in Kupargaon when Meherwanji roughly pushed his hand away and shook his arm loose. Next.
All right. Thank you, Mona. I'll take over again here.
Yeah.
Marwanji then glared at the policeman in such an intense, forceful manner that the fellow actually stumbled back, thinking he might be in danger. Marwanji, however, immediately fell at the policeman's feet and begged his pardon. The man did not know what to think as Marwanji rose and turned away, walking off into the desolate blackness of the moonless night. The radiant glow on Marwanji's face could not be hidden, even in his dazed condition. The policeman stared at the strange young man as he disappeared into the night, puzzled by this chance encounter. After Marwanji reached the village of Limgaon, 2 miles from Shirdi, a strange incident occurred. Suddenly, out of the blackness, four large dogs bounded towards him. They barked ferociously, but did not bite him. Paying no attention to their threats, Marwanji continued walking. A little farther along the road, four more wild dogs appeared and barked at him, but he paid no heed to them and walked on. After some distance, another pack of four dogs rushed at Marwanji, and this time they seemed ready to attack. But Marwanji did not show the least fear. The dogs surrounded him menacingly and began to bark furiously. Marwanji suddenly got an impulse to run as fast as he could. He took off with the dogs racing after him, howling crazily. Marwanji ran fast and left the dogs behind. He continued running until he reached Shirdi at about 3:30 in the morning. He stopped on the outskirts of the village and glanced in each direction. Deciding not to go to Sai Baba, he lay down to rest alongside the road for a few hours. And the footnote says after January 1914, Merwan never actually slept again. A God realized person's rest is not like that of an ordinary man. Such a being is always awake and does not sleep. God realized individuals can be said to rest at a point on the particular plane of consciousness where they station themselves. At dawn, Marwanji got up from the roadside and strode rapidly towards Sikori, crossing the 7 mile distance in about an hour. No sooner had Marwanji stepped near Upasni Maharaj's hut than Upasni's close women disciple, Durgabai, arrived carrying a large dead dog in her arms. She told Maharaj that the dog had fallen into a well and had died during the night. As she gazed at Marwanji, she silently handed the carcass to him. Taking the dead animal in his arms, he ran far away with it and threw it into a pit. He then ran back and joined Upasni in his hut. No one knew of Marwanji's earlier encounters with the three packs of wild dogs. The villagers discussed the event of the dead dog for several days because dogs seldom ever fall into wells. It was a strange occurrence, and being superstitious, they wondered what it meant. Of course, none knew of what Marwanji had passed through that same night. Wearing the same coat and pants, Marwanji stayed with Upasni Maharaj for 8 days and then returned to Pune. In addition to visiting Upasni Maharaj in Sakori regularly, Marwanji later started corresponding with him. However, most of the contents of the letters or messages appeared to be indecipherable by anyone else but them. Occasionally, Marwanji sent Upasni messages through either Baramji or later through two close associates, Sadashiv Patel and Syed Sahib. Baramji tried to read the messages, but found them to be too mysterious. Although the language of the letters was simple, the sentences seemed meaningless. Later, Marwanji would send parcels to Upasni of various items Marwanji's aunt Pila Masi would prepare. The parcels were also strange. For example, in one, Marwan sent Upasni just a needle and thread. Pilamasi and Masaji moved next door to Bopla House. Pilamasi's health was failing due to a serious asthmatic condition and tuberculosis, and she was confined to her bed. Marwanji loved her and would come to see her every day. She lived only for his visits. They talked about God and the saints most of the time, and he also told her about his trips to Sakori and about Upasni Maharaj's greatness. She would then ask, "But Merag, when will you take me with you to Sakori? I must meet this Maharaj at least once." Her nephew would reply, "Masi, I will definitely take you to him. Don't worry, I promise." Pila Masi's affliction worsened, and one day Marwanji was called to come immediately. After sitting with her and holding her hand, he mixed some udi, duni ash, in a glass of sugared water and told her, "This ash is sacred. It is from Upasni Maharaj's duni. Drink it, and by tomorrow you will be well. You will be cured forever." She drank it, and he continued, "Masi, do you know what I am going to do for you tomorrow? I am going to take you to Upasni Maharaj." Squeezing Marwanji's hand tightly, she smiled with gratitude and love. The next day, Pila Masi died. Marwanji consoled his uncle. "Masaji, don't worry. The responsibility of looking after Esfandiar and Naja is now with me. I will take care of them. I accept full responsibility for them. Don't worry about your children. They are mine now." Amazing, considering he didn't have full gross consciousness yet.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, I will pass along to the next reader. Was that you, Michal? Oh no, that was Rosalie. Rosalie,
Yeah,
you ready?
Rosalie.
Yeah. Nacha was around 9 years old and Espandiar was 14. Both could not stop crying, and Marwanji consoled them too, saying, "Cousins, why are you crying? Am I not here to look after you? Did you want your mother to suffer more? It is much better that she has passed away. Now she is peaceful, enjoying rest in heaven. Isn't this better? She is happy, I promise you." The children were greatly comforted, and Merwanji held them tenderly. After Pilamasi's death, Masaji moved from Pune to Ahmednagar, and his children went to live with their aunt Daula Masi. During October 1917, Merwanji was staying with Upasni Maharaj at Sakori. One night, Upasni sent Merwanji to Shirdi to see Gustaji, who was then living under Sai Baba's guidance and had been fasting for months. Merwanji arrived about 11 at night and found Gustaji, who was astonished to learn that Merwanji had come just to see him. After Merwanji inquired about his health, the prolonged fasting had reduced him almost to a skeleton. Gustaji started talking about Sai Baba.
Footnote: Gustaji had been present in Sakori in December 1915 when Marwanji had first met Sai Baba, and he heard Sai Baba utter Pavardigar when Marwanji prostrated before him.
Merwanji was about to leave when Gustaji suggested he come with him for Sai Baba's darshan. Before departing, Merwanji replied, "I have no time, I must leave for Pune." His leaving without meeting Sai Baba further convinced Gustaji that Merwanji had come to Shirdi for the sole purpose of befriending him. On 1st February 1918, a son named Din Shah was born to Merwanji's friends Khoda and Naja. The next day, Merwanji visited them in the hospital and casually remarked, "My first disciple has been born." They did not understand what he meant and took it as a joke, as no one thought of Merwan as a spiritual master yet. But this was about to change, since Merwanji was seen regularly seated next to Babajan. Her own followers began to inquire about him. She did not answer directly, but she often repeated to them, "Merwan is my son, my beloved son. He is why I am here in Pune. One day my son will shake the whole world. You have no idea of his greatness." Gradually, Babajan's followers started to look upon Merwanji with respect and reverence. One of Babajan's devotees was Babu Rao Genuba Ubale, 18. Being the owner of a bicycle shop, he was known as Babu Cyclewala. Babu heard Babajan speak of Merwanji often and was so taken by Babajan's statements that he sought Merwanji out and began spending time in his company. He was overpowered by his love and was one of the first to recognize Merwanji's majesty. Kaikushru Irani was the son of Shariarji's elder brother, Khodadad. The family lived in Bombay, and from childhood, Kaikushru had played with Merwan and later greatly admired his cousin. Unfortunately, around January 1918, in the prime of his youth, Kaikushru suddenly died at the age of 32. Kaikushru had been a virtuous young man and his father's right hand in the family's business. Khodadad and his family were deeply stricken with grief. The tragic news reached Bobo and Memo, who decided that Merwan should be sent to represent the family and, on their behalf, participate in the funeral ceremony. He was to return after 4 days when the last rites were completed. Although Merwan had been on close terms with his cousin, he did not react as if Kaikushru's death was such a terrible tragedy. Understanding the true nature of life and death, Merwan knew it was not possible for him to express sorrow or grief at the funeral. He was aware of the usual proceedings of wailing and weeping at funerals, and he knew that he would offend his uncle if he did not exhibit such emotions. He did not look forward to 4 days of lamentation and tried to escape this responsibility, but his parents insisted that he attend. Merwan took a train to Bombay and went to the family's home, where he found the expected gloomy atmosphere of mourning. Despite his efforts, Merwan could not bring himself to express any sign of grief. Fortunately, a perfect stratagem arose. On seeing the white-gowned corpse displayed on the stone floor, Merwan relaxed his whole body, turned his eyes upwards, and fell down on the floor as if in a swoon. Thinking that he had fainted, the family tried various remedies to bring him around. When he revived after some time, he was made to lie on a bed. Thus, he escaped attending the funeral. When the mourners returned, Kodadad was worried about Merwan. He was as dear to his uncle as his own son had been. He was aware of Merwan's traumas and thought it was best to send his favorite nephew back to Pune on the next train. Merwan, relieved to escape the depressing atmosphere, expressed his sympathy to all the other relatives before departing. Meanwhile, owing to Jamshed's ill health and Bombay's inclement weather, Jamshed had moved back to Pune, where he was employed in the military accounts department.
Dr. Ghani's father worked in the same department, so it is likely Jamshed's position was obtained with his help.
He had also gotten married to a first cousin named Khorshid. Khorshid, oh, go ahead.
Khorshid was the daughter of Shireen Mai's brother Dinshaw Mama and his wife Rawat.
Khorshid, 19, had preferred to marry Merwan and had her eye on him for a long time. Merwan knew this and had therefore persuaded Jamshed to marry her. Jamshed did not want to marry the girl, but Merwan pressured him to agree to this arranged marriage. During this period, Merwan's aunt Dala Masi and uncle Feridun Masa owned a small restaurant in Pune.
All right, thank you, Rosalie. Michal, would you pick it up?
Yeah. Every morning between 9 and 10 o'clock, Merwan would go there and have fresh cream with sugar. A good portion was always kept aside for their favorite nephew. The prasad of sweets and fruits that was distributed after the morning arati at the temple room was prepared by Daula Masi at her home with the help of cousin Naja and Jamshed's wife Khorshid, whose love for Merwan transformed into spiritual devotion. Faridun Masa would bring the prasad to the temple each morning in a large basket on his head. Cousin Esfandiao would not attend the morning prayers since he would be left in charge of the restaurant in Faridun Masa's absence. Thus, all of Merwan's close relatives served him in one way or another, and they too began referring to him as Merwanji rather than Merwan. Merwan's father, Shariarji, was a kind and generous man. Even when Bobo was older, he had forbearance of an ascetic. He had not become wealthy, but was successful in his toddy shop. He gave money to the poor and distributed not only financial help, but blankets and clothing as well. If the toddy shop closed unusually late at night, Shariarji would sleep there instead of returning home. Having slept many a night in the cold as a wandering dervish, he knew what it was to sleep on the streets. If he saw any poor person shivering in the cold, he would inevitably give his own blanket to him. This happened so often that one day Memo remarked caustically, "If we had collected the amount of blankets Shorog has given away, we could have opened a blanket shop by now." As the years went on, Memo never gave up hope that Merog would be cured of his mental affliction. She thought he was crazy. Settle down with a family and make something of his life. Beramji was a shrewd businessman and had several tea and toddy shops in Pune by this time. One day, Memo took him aside and offered to advance half the money necessary to start another toddy shop if Behramji would take Merog as his partner. Behramji was delighted and agreed to the offer. On 1st August 1918, Behramji procured a liquor license. This time, he remembered to have it in his own name, and in partnership with Merwanji, opened a new toddy shop at 723 Kaspapes.
Peth is a borough or locality of a city.
Okay. Merwan took the business seriously. Each morning from 6 until noon, he worked in the toddy shop. He rose early so he could prepare to open the shop. He cleaned the toilets, swept the floors and veranda, and generally cleaned up the place. When he washed the bottles, then he washed the bottles and dishes and prepared the toddy. Most of the toddy shop customers were the usual derelicts and unsavory characters that frequented such establishments. At times, some would have too much to drink, become rude and disorderly, and begin cursing obscenities. Often there were brawls. No matter what sort of men they were, Meranji would always handle them kindly, gently influencing them to change their ways. Beramji, on the other hand, refused to tolerate any drunken behavior. Not a day passed when he did not beat or abuse someone, usually throwing the fellow out of the shop. However, when Beramji was out of the shop, these uncouth characters were drawn to Merwanji. They were attracted to the love within him. He would spend hours with them, and when they were in a mood to listen, he would advise them to drink less and eventually give it up. Merwanji tried to see that his customers never drank more than they could handle. If anyone wanted to continue insisting on ordering one toddy after another, he would refuse to serve him. The toddy shop was a refuge, not only for alcoholics, but also for vagrant and sometimes sadhus, who would line up outside the shop. Merwanji would reach in the till with his slender hands, gather a handful of silver coins, and fling the money to them. Naturally, news of his generosity spread fast among the beggars, and many came every day. Gradually, Merwanji was preparing and drawing certain persons to him through his loving nature and generous personality. Working in the toddy shop was the medium he used for contacting certain men who would later become his close disciples. From the outside, the toddy shop appeared to be a normal liquor business, but inside it was a tavern for the give and take of divine love. There was also another reason for Merwanji to physically exert himself so much at that time. While he was coming down from superconsciousness, Nirvikalp Samadhi, through the mental and subtle planes to normal gross consciousness, Merwanji needed to do some menial, intensely gross physical tasks. Doing some low-type labor, such as cleaning toilets, washing dishes, and sweeping floors, increased his gross awareness or worldly consciousness and brought him down sooner to function normally again in the world.
All right, thank you, Michal. I see Mahu has joined us. Mahu, would you like to read?
I'm sorry. Yes, I read from where?
Right from the top here.
Okay. Merwan is born 1918. During these days in 1918, two men, I'm sorry, during these 2 days in 1918, two men came into Merwanji's contact who would later play significant roles in relation to him. They were Sadashiv Govinath Shelki, known as Sadashiv Patel, and Sayyid Sahib Pirzadeh. Sayyid
With
Sahib
that,
Pirzadeh. That's a Muslim name.
Let's see, the footnote says Patil is a respectful form of address to someone who is well off.
Okay. Sayyid Sahib, a Muslim, was a regular visitor to Baba Jan, who had personally introduced him to Mervanji. Through increasing contact with Mervanji, Sayyid Sahib was gradually drawn closer to him. Mervanji took personal interest in Sayyid Sahib's individual difficulties, financial and otherwise. Because of Mervanji's genuine concern, Sayyid Sahib opened his heart to him. When they first met, Sadishav Patel, a Hindu, was 29, 5 years older than Mervanji. Sadishav was the Maratha landlord of Mervanji's new toddy shop in Kaspa Path, and he and his wife Geeta lived over the shop. Excuse me. One day, Mervanji happened to stop by Sadashiv's apartment and requested a meal. Sadashiv was quite unprepared and answered that the food was not ready. Mervanji replied, "That's all right. Some leftovers will be fine." Wishing he had more elaborate fare to offer, Sadashiv reluctantly put the leftovers in front of Mervanji, who ate with pleasure. Initially, Sadashiv had taken Mervanji to be merely a toddy shopkeeper, but he later recognized him to be someone quite different. It was Sadashiv who for the first time used the appellation Mervan Saf in referring to Mervanji. Seth is a term of respect and means a person of influence. No one yet acknowledged him to be a God-realized master, although most of his acquaintances thought him to be extraordinary. Some accepted him as a staunch, devout disciple of both Babajan and Upasni Maharaj, but no one thought of him as a saint or as a spiritually advanced soul. However, although Mervanji was only in his mid-20s, young and old alike looked upon him with respect. Young and old alike looked upon him with respect. So from 1918 onward, Mervanji was called Mervan Sep by the people living in Kaspapeth. Mervan Seth introduced Sadashiv to Sayyid Sahib, and they immediately became closely connected. Later, Mervan Seth would take either man with him when he visited Upasni Maharaj. It was through Mervan Seth that both came to recognize Upasni's greatness and spiritual authority as a perfect master. As mentioned, both men served as personal messengers for letters and messages passing back and forth between Mervan Seth and Upasni Maharaj. Another devotee from this period was a Muslim named Ahmed Abbas, later nicknamed Khak Sahib. You know, Khak is a dust, who had grown up in Pune. Ahmed became
What did you say it meant? What did you say?
Khak means the dust.
Oh,
Khak
okay.
Sahib. Yeah. Ahmed became acquainted with Mervan Seth during 1914, soon after Babajan had given him God realization. But it was only later when Mervan had the toddy shop in Kaspa Path and Ahmed began following him as his master. After working at the toddy shop in the morning, Mervan Seth would go home and have only a small vegetarian lunch. Then going to his room, he would start striking his forehead on the flagstone floor for as long as 4 hours. If he did not do this grim practice at home, he would go to a secluded spot near Ferguson College or to an area known as a jaunty pier instead of the Tower of Silence or the Goli Bar area as before. Go ahead and read.
John T. Peer may be referring to the area in the vicinity of Jangli Maharaja's Samadhi.
Okay, I got it. When when Merwan was banging his head on the floor at home, his mother heard a thudding sound coming from his room. The room was always kept closed, so she was never aware of what was he doing. But this particular day, Memo pushed the door open and was aghast at what she saw. She shrieked loudly, and Bobo, Jal, and Behram came running. Merwan had blood all over his face. Crying, she asked, Merok, have you gone mad? Are you insane? Wiping the blood off with a towel, he said, I am not mad. I have become something else. Disgusted, Memo turned to Bobo and complained, look at your son. Who else but a madman would bang his head on the floor? Bobo tried to defend Merwan. No, Shirin, it is not so. It is the other way around. Merog is not mad, believe me. You are also mad, Memo declared. She was terribly upset after seeing Merwan's strange behavior and became increasingly worried with her dearest son really was now incurably insane. Memo wept bitterly. I'm a little bit emotional. I don't know what's going on.
It certainly is.
Because I'm a
certainly.
mother too, you know.
Of
Anyway,
course, Mamush, she
um,
went through a hard time with him, really. And we would see
Yeah.
our sons like that, we would be upset. We would not understand.
Yeah, and you know what Boba went through
Yeah,
in
what Baba went through.
parallel. Yeah,
Yeah, parallel, completely parallel.
yeah. So Memo wept bitterly, cursing Baba John, who was remarked. Oh, I'm actually emotional. I can't read. Can somebody else
I'll
read?
just finish this page up for you.
Okay.
Memo wept bitterly, cursing Babajan, Upasni Maharaj, Sai Baba, and all the other holy men who had ruined her son's beautiful life. During this period, while he was regaining his gross human consciousness, Merwan would usually go out with his close companions at 5 in the afternoon for a walk or a picnic, or to a field to play cricket, or games such as Acha Pacha or Gila Dandi. Footnote says Acha Pacha is played by teams in a large rectangular field with many horizontal lines and one bisecting vertical line. Each side attempts to reach the other's goal without being tagged. After playing, all his friends would be treated to refreshments of sweets, fruits, or tea. On these occasions, Merwan would spend between 5 to 10 rupees, which in those days was considered a lavish amount. In a natural manner, all his friends would speak openly and honestly with him about their lives. With empathy, Merwan Seth would patiently listen to their troubles and offer suggestions to solve them. Gradually, every acquaintance yearned for more and more of his company, and would take every opportunity to be with him. Merwan Seth never favored any religion, caste, or creed above others. All are from one God, he would emphasize, and he would write poems and sheris, couplets, on this theme. He advised others not to criticize other religions and to respect all religions as our own. These four lines, taken from one of his early poems, show the depth of his understanding and the purity of his thought about other religions. One soul in different bodies, one father having different children with different natures. Others' religions, why should we speak ill of them? All religions are good, only we are bad. Merwan Seth gave this simple explanation about God and religion. Basically, religion is one. There is only one religion. The source from which this religion has come into being is continuous despite the lapses of ages. Yet several branches have come forth from this one religion, such as the Zoroastrian, Hindu, and Mohammedan religions. There have been many others. For example, water from the tap fills different pots for different purposes, like washing, cooking, drinking, etc. The source, the tap, is the same. Similarly, the Hindu or Mohammedan religion, or the Zoroastrian or Buddhist or Christian religion, springs from the same source, which is God. Occasionally, Merwan Seth would revisit the toddy shop in the evenings, but no matter how large the crowd there would be, or how busy the shop was, he would not lend a helping hand to Baramji. Instead, he would politely excuse himself and go to the house of a Muslim named Munshi Sheikh Abdur Rahim. Munshiji was the storekeeper at the Public Works Department in Pune. His office assistant was Syed Saheb, through whom Munshiji had heard about Merwan Seth. One day, Merwan Seth went to Munshiji's office concerning some business with the toddy shop. Without knowing who he was, Munshiji was so taken by Merwan's appearance that he could not even say, "May I help you, sir?" Munshiji simply stared at the striking figure and wondered who this young man was. Merwan introduced himself and proceeded to get his work done. After he left, Munshiji longed to see Merwan Seth again. Soon after, Syed Saheb invited Merwan Seth to visit Munshiji's home. Munshiji inwardly recognized Merwan Seth to be someone spiritual or highly advanced and offered his home near Sassoon Hospital as a center for Merwan Seth's activities. His offer was accepted. Munshiji, 42, was a faithful Muslim, but he was also a generous, simple-hearted, unassuming person. He believed in the prophethood of Muhammad, but was not orthodox. He enjoyed socializing with his friends, but most of all he enjoyed playing cards. This he hesitated to admit to Merwan Seth, thinking it was not spiritual. One day Merwan Seth casually asked Munshiji, why don't you ever play cards? Munshiji haltingly answered, I do, but in your presence I would not. Merwan Seth interrupted, what harm is there in playing cards? I will play a game with you. Munshiji was overjoyed. Munshiji gradually became convinced that Merwan Seth had the ability to read his thoughts. One evening he was thinking, for some days now I have been eating meat. Tomorrow I must eat fish. But how can I buy fish? It is not the season. The next morning, Munshiji was surprised when he saw Merwan Seth bicycling toward him, carrying a large fish in his hand. Merwan smiled and, handing the fish to Munshiji, pedaled away without a word. This incident convinced Munshiji that Merwan Seth knew everything, for he had not told anyone of his desire to eat fish. Another evening, Munshiji went to bed with a fever. He woke in the middle of the night, took a bath, and swallowed 2 quinine tablets. Early the next morning, Merwan Seth came to his house and said, what a novel remedy you took for your fever. A bath in the dead of night and 2 tablets of quinine? Munshiji was again wonderstruck at Marwan's omniscience. A group of Marwan Seth's friends and associates began gathering every evening at Munshiji's house. Marwan Seth would have the Divan of Hafez read for an hour or two, explaining the poetry's mystical meaning to his comrades. Afterward, the group would sometimes play a game of cards or have some light entertainment. Munshiji, a bachelor, was a good cook and would serve some food. Thereafter, Marwan would depart to visit Babajan under her neem tree. Sitting with Babajan every night and scratching her back, along with striking his forehead against stone during the day, were the only two activities that Marwan Seth never missed during this period. Okay, we have come to the end of our time, and we will pick up next time on page 199. Let me make a note. Okay. Um, Mona, could you turn off the recording at this point?
Yes.
And I will.
Sorry,
Can I stop
you
the
want me
share?
to
Yeah.
read?
Stop the. No, we're gonna stop the share. We've come to the end of our time. It's 1:30. Maybe
Okay.
we'd like to discuss anything we read. We certainly could. It was quite
It's
a lot. Quite a
written
lot
so
of
well.
amazing things in that 20 pages we read there.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of your recollection, Marvin.
Well,
A lot.
um, there was the incident with Bailey. A few incidences. Bailey convinced him to join the Navy, and he actually signed up. Could you imagine if you sign up in America, your father can't go down and get you out of it? I don't think.
Yeah, that's true. That's
And
true. It's the most amazing.
And also there was this incident with the dogs. I always remember that thing because it's so different. You know, he was going to Pasni Maharaj and he went down the train one town, two towns before, and he was walking in the dark and a policeman stopped him and told him there were robbers and that he should not continue. And he just pushed the policeman away and kept on. And there was four dogs barking at him and he was not afraid. He continued. And then another pack of four dogs, wild dogs, also barking at him, and also he didn't. And then he came towards a third group of four dogs that actually started barking, and he ran speedily all the way to the city and slept. And next day he came up to Pasni Maharaj, and the lady there brought a dead dog to him that fell into a well. And this is so strange. It's such a strange story. It's like some kind of dark forces that were chasing him because he ran away from that. He was scared by that and he was ran away. And seems that Upasni Maharaj was in some way helping him.
we know how fast he could walk, so he
Yeah.
probably similarly could run faster than anyone at that
Yeah,
time.
especially he was
Plus,
very
to
slim at that.
outrun dogs is just phenomenal.
Well, he
And
had
what
his
is
superpowers.
interesting, and what is interesting for me is that, that participating in Toddy shop or his acquaintance and friendship with a couple of these guys is just perhaps it was a way of him engaging himself in the world and just gaining the consciousness of that finite consciousness we read in God Speaks, just to be able to just get grounded and grounded and grounded and get to work. Yeah, well, he was already working, but more working. So he did all of that for us. It really touches my heart. And plus, one thing I like to share is I'm very much impacted by what's happening in Afghanistan right now. So I guess my emotional part might have something to do with, as much as I try not to follow the news, but yeah, it's a lot happening to women and kids and civilians, a lot. So we just can't be, we're just one planet, right? Just we're one. So when we see that, we see the photos and all that, it's hard. It's really
I
hard.
don't look at the news, and it keeps me quieter, and I didn't even know it was happening. But today it's the second time that people are talking about it and about what is happening to women there. And it is very sad that
Yeah.
it is so. But I think that Baba is putting an end to it.
Yeah, he's part of his cleanup, and perhaps why it is impacting me, because same thing happened 42 years ago in Iran.
I know.
Exactly same thing. Well,
I
with the
know.
help of other foreign countries, they brought the Khomeini, they created the Islamic Republic of Iran, they took over, and they are there for 42 years.
I read
And
the story. I read
yeah,
the story
same
that this
as
girl,
Taliban. Yeah, go ahead.
I read the story of this girl that came to America, and she was shot in her eye by the Taliban because she went to study. And do you know her name? And she was, I think, nominated for a Nobel Prize of Peace or something like that.
In
Do you know?
Pakistan. Yeah,
Her
In
name-
Pakistan.
the one she lived in Pakistan.
And
No,
she
yeah.
writes of how it started, how the process started with the Talibans, how they slowly put their hands on the whole thing. And it's really just terrible.
Yeah. But I guess it's all part of Baba's plan. All this darkness needs to come out. He deal with them, and is getting ready to more and more of his manifestation. It's part of his manifestation.
I don't like when
Yeah.
people put Baba as responsible for the darkness in this world. The darkness of this world is not Baba's responsibility. He's shown us how to put light into this world, and the darkness is people who are not listening to God.
Yeah,
So
but darkness is Baba is in darkness too. See, Baba is in everything and everyone.
Baba
And
has
those meaning,
but he does not react it. Baba has everything in him, but he does not express the darkness in him. And people who have darkness and light in them are expressing their darkness. And that's not what Baba
he
said to do.
evokes that, he is surfacing things up, and these are all coming out. And of course, in our illusory senses and sense, we attribute a meaning to each one of these. And that's why perhaps it impacts me and I cry. But perhaps in Mandeli's thoughts or Baba, this is all the same, is one big dream, whether we're overjoyed or whether we cry, whether we're sad or we celebrate. Same thing. It's all dream within a dream within a dream.
I so don't like it when people put it on Baba's shoulders, this darkness. It's not his doing. It's our doing, our mistakes. And God has been telling us for ages not to do these things, not to do and not to do and not to do, and people are doing. So now it's enough. You've heard enough. Baba said, you've heard enough. That's why I'm silent now. You've heard enough. Now it's time to wake up. Those who can wake up, wake up. Those who cannot wake up, Mahapralaya.
I don't know, people around me, I haven't seen anybody that puts all this on Baba. I mean, even when
just saying that Baba is doing this and bringing it out, it's just saying something that is wrong. Baba never told people to do bad things, never
Wait a
told people
minute,
to put
wait a
women
minute.
down.
Look.
Well,
There is
wait a
something, we just don't want to talk about it.
Let's not.
Baba is the
Lord,
only
Meher reading.
doer.
Please, let's don't take the news into the Meher reading. Thank you. Bye. See you next week.
Okay.
We'll see
Bye.
you next week. Jai Baba.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Okay, everyone. I think we should call it a session. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Melvin. Thank you, Mona.
Thanks, everyone. Avatar, Meher Baba, Ki Jai.
Jai Baba.